My own children prevented me from saying goodbye to my husband at his funeral. 1 week later, when I arrived for the reading of the will, Michael looked at me with contempt and said, "This meeting is only for the heirs named in the will." Linda smiled mockingly right next to him. Daniel nodded from his chair while Sarah whispered something in her husband's ear. I said nothing. I just took a folder out of my purse and handed it to the lawyer in silence. When he opened it, my children turned pale as if they had seen a ghost. My name, Emily, was on every page as the sole heir. I am a 67-year-old woman who just discovered that her own children are capable of betraying her in the cruelest way imaginable. I thought I knew Michael and Daniel. I raised them with love. I educated them. I sacrificed my own dreams to give them everything they needed. I worked day and night to keep this family afloat after their father lost his job when they were teenagers. But on the day of my husband's funeral, the man who had been their father for 42 years, they treated me like a stranger, like I had no right to be there, as if 45 years of marriage meant nothing. Michael pushed me away from the casket when I wanted to say goodbye one last time. "You already had your moment, Mom," he told me coldly. Daniel did not even look at me when tears began to roll down my cheeks. Their wives, Linda and Sarah, behaved even worse. Linda went so far as to tell me I was making an unnecessary scene when I broke down seeing my husband's serene face. Sarah simply shrugged and murmured, "Family dramas are not appropriate at a funeral," as if my pain were an act, as if losing the love of my life were just an emotional whim. That night, I returned to my empty house, feeling like I had lost not only my husband but also my children. But there was something they did not know. Something my husband and I had planned in secret during his final months of life, when he already sensed his illness would soon defeat him. My husband had made 2 wills. One fake, which he left visible on his desk, where he divided everything between Michael and Daniel, and another real one kept in a safe that only I knew about, where he left everything to me. He had noticed the changes in our children long before I did. He had seen how they treated me with less respect each passing year. He had heard their conversations about the inheritance when they thought we were not around. "Emily," he told me one night while taking his medication, "our children have changed. They are no longer the boys we raised with so much love. They have become ambitious and cruel. This will protect you when I am gone." I did not want to believe him then. I thought he was being too hard on them. How wrong I was. The week after the funeral was a roller coaster of emotions. Michael called me exactly once to ask if I needed anything, but his tone was so cold and formal that I knew he was only fulfilling a social obligation. Daniel did not even bother to contact me. Their wives, of course, disappeared completely from my life, as if they had never been part of this family. When I received the call from the lawyer for the reading of the will, my heart raced. I knew the moment of truth had arrived. I knew my children were about to get the surprise of their lives. But I also knew that once I revealed the real will, there would be no turning back. The relationship with them would be broken forever. I dressed in my best black suit, the same one I had worn to meet my husband's parents decades ago. I put on the pearl earrings he had given me for our 20th anniversary. I wanted to look dignified, strong, imposing. I wanted my children to remember this moment for the rest of their lives. I arrived at the lawyer's office 5 minutes before the agreed time. Michael and Daniel were already there with their wives, laughing and speaking in low voices as if they were at a social gathering. When they saw me enter, their faces tensed slightly, but they did not get up to greet me. Linda looked me up and down with disdain. Sarah pretended to check her phone to avoid eye contact. I sat in the chair furthest from them, feeling the tension fill the room like thick smoke. The lawyer, an older man named Mr. Thompson, who had been a friend of my husband for years, gave me a compassionate look before starting with the legal protocols. Before starting, Michael interrupted the lawyer, saying, "I want to clarify that this meeting is solely for the heirs mentioned in our father's will." He looked me directly in the eyes when he added, "Mom, you can stay if you want, but this really does not concern you." Daniel nodded with a smile that made my blood run cold. Their wives exchanged looks of satisfaction as if they had just won a battle. That moment was when I knew my husband had been right about everything. Our children had become strangers, cruel and ambitious. There was nothing left of the love and respect I had expected from them. They were no longer my boys. They were two grown men who saw their own mother as an obstacle to their greed. I took a deep breath and pulled the folder from my purse. I placed it on the table calmly without saying a word. Mr. Thompson looked at me with curiosity but asked no questions. He knew there was something else at play. My children, on the other hand, did not even notice my gesture. They were too busy mentally calculating how much money they were going to receive. "We will proceed, then, with the official reading," announced Mr. Thompson, opening the envelope Michael had handed him the previous week. He began to read the fake will with a clear and professional voice. "I, being of sound mind and body, leave all my assets to my sons, Michael and Daniel, in equal parts." Well, Linda squeezed her husband's hand with excitement. Sarah smiled broadly. Daniel leaned back in his chair with satisfaction. But then I raised my hand. "Excuse me, Mr. Thompson," I said with a firm voice. "I believe there is a mistake. That is not my husband's valid will." I pushed the folder toward him. "This is the real document certified and signed before a notary barely 3 months before his death." The silence that followed was deafening. Mr. Thompson opened the folder with trembling hands. His eyes moved rapidly from side to side as he read the first lines. Michael sat up abruptly in his chair. "What are you talking about, Mom? That will we just read is official. Dad showed it to us personally. Your father showed you what he wanted you to see." I responded without getting upset. "But the legal and binding will is this one, which has been in my hands since the day he died." Mr. Thompson continued reading, his face getting paler. Daniel leaned over the desk, trying to see the documents over the lawyer's shoulder. "Mrs. Emily," said Mr. Thompson finally, "this will is duly certified and dated. It is subsequent to the other document, so it cancels out any previous provision." He cleared his throat before continuing. "According to this document, you inherit the entirety of your husband's assets, the house, the bank accounts, the investments, the life insurance. Everything is in the trust in your name." The reaction was immediate and explosive. Michael stood up so violently that his chair fell backward. "That is impossible. Dad would never do something like that. You manipulated him in his final days." Linda screamed something about undue influence and taking advantage of a sick man. Daniel stood paralyzed with his mouth open, unable to process what he had just heard. Sarah was the first to recover her composure, but her voice trembled with rage when she spoke. "This is a scam. A woman your age does not know how to handle so much money. You are going to squander it all and leave us with nothing." Her comment about my age was like a slap in the face, as if my 67 years automatically made me mentally useless. "A scam," I repeated, standing up slowly from my chair. "Do you want to talk about scams? Do you want to talk about manipulating an elderly person?" My voice began to rise for the first time in the entire meeting. "You spent the last 2 years of your father's life pressuring him to give you money. Michael, how many times did you go to ask him for loans you never paid back?" Michael turned red but maintained his defiant attitude. "That is different. We are his sons. We have a right to expect his support." Daniel nodded vigorously. "Besides, Mom, let's be realistic. You already lived your life. We have families to support, mortgages to pay, futures to build." His words hurt me more than I expected. "I already lived my life?" I whispered. Is that what you think of me? That I am a useless old woman waiting for death?" Tears began to form in my eyes, but I held them back. I was not going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me cry. Linda approached me with fake compassion. "Emily, no one is saying you are useless, but you have to admit that handling such a large inheritance is complicated. We can help you. We can manage the money for you." Her smile was sweet, but her eyes shined with pure greed. "Like you managed the money I lent you last year for Daniel's business," I asked. "The money you never paid back? The money you spent on a vacation to Europe while I ate canned soup to save?" Daniel lowered his gaze but denied nothing. His silence was confession enough. Mr. Thompson cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Mrs. Emily, if you allow me to continue with the reading of the will, there are some additional provisions I must mention." I sat back down, wiping away the tears that had managed to escape. My children remained standing as if sitting down would be admitting defeat. "Your husband also left a personal letter addressed to you," continued the lawyer, "and a statement explaining his reasons for this decision." He took a sealed envelope from the folder and handed it to me. My hands trembled slightly as I took it. It was my husband's handwriting, my name written with the affection of 4 decades together. Michael tried to snatch the letter from me. "If it is something concerning the family, we have a right to hear it." I pushed him away firmly. "This letter is for me." "Your father was very clear about that." I opened the envelope carefully as if it were a fragile treasure. And in a way it was. "My dear Emily," the letter began, "if you are reading this, it means our children have shown their true nature. I have observed for months how they treat you with contempt and condescension. I have seen how they plan our future without considering you. That is why I have taken this decision." I looked up at Michael and Daniel. Their faces reflected a mixture of panic and fury. They knew that whatever that letter said would not be favorable for them. I continued reading in silence, but Linda could not contain herself. "Read it out loud. If we are going to be disinherited, at least we have the right to know why." Her voice was shrill, desperate. Sarah supported her immediately. "It is true. We deserve an explanation." I looked at Mr. Thompson, who nodded slightly. I took a deep breath and began to read the words of my late husband. "I have observed for months how they treat you with contempt and condescension. Michael speaks to you as if you were a maid. Daniel acts as if your opinions had no value. Their wives see you as a nuisance they must tolerate. That is not true." Daniel interrupted. "We respect Mom." But his protest sounded hollow even to himself. I continued reading, ignoring him. "I have decided to leave you everything because you are the only person in this family who deserves my trust and respect." I continued reading my husband's letter. "Our children have forgotten the values we taught them. They have forgotten the sacrifice you made for them during all these years. They love you only when they need something from you." Michael hit the table with his fist. "This is manipulation." Dad was sick, confused by the medication, but I knew the truth. My husband had been lucid until the end, more lucid than our children imagined. He had seen what I refused to see for years. "Your father wrote this letter 3 days before dying," I said, closing the envelope. "He was completely aware. In fact, he asked me to read it in front of you if you ever questioned his decisions." I put the letter in my purse as if it were the most valuable thing I possessed, and perhaps it was. Mr. Thompson cleared his throat again. "There is one more provision in the will that I must read." All eyes turned toward him. The deceased specifies that if any of his children attempt to contest this will or question his wife's mental capacity to manage the inheritance, they will automatically lose any right to receive the small monthly allowance he has left them. "Small allowance?" Sarah asked with a voice barely audible. "Did he leave us something after all?" The lawyer nodded and consulted his documents. "He has left $500 monthly to each of you for 2 years on the condition that you treat your mother with respect and do not interfere in her financial decisions. $500. After a lifetime waiting for $1 million inheritance, that was what they would receive." Linda burst out laughing, but it was a hysterical, desperate laugh. $500? Is that what we are worth to him? To you? She pointed at me with an accusing finger as if I were responsible for my husband's decisions. You are worth exactly what you have demonstrated you are worth, I responded calmly. For years, I watched you treat your father like an ATM. I saw you anxiously waiting for him to die so you could inherit. Do you think I did not notice your looks when he talked about going to the doctor? Do you think I did not hear your conversations about how much time he had left? Daniel slumped in his chair, finally understanding the magnitude of what they had lost. Mom, please, we can fix this. We can talk as a family. His voice sounded different now, almost pleading. But it was too late for please. As a family? I asked. When was the last time you treated me like family? When was the last time you invited me to dinner without asking me for money first? When was the last time Linda spoke to me without that condescending tone she uses with me? Linda opened her mouth to protest but closed it immediately. She knew I was right. Michael tried a different approach. Okay, we admit we have made mistakes, but you are our mother. Blood is stronger than any resentment. We can start over. He approached me with his arms extended as if he were going to hug me. I backed away instinctively. Start over, I whispered. Like when we started over after you told me I was a burden when your father lost his job. Like when we started over after Daniel told me I should move to a nursing home so I would not get in your way. Like when we started over after your wives told me my advice was no longer necessary because I belonged to another generation. Each question was like a slap in the face to them. I could see on their faces that they remembered every incident, every cruel moment they thought I had forgotten. But I remembered everything, every slight, every hurtful comment, every time they made me feel invisible in my own family. Sarah stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. A woman your age cannot handle so much money alone. You are going to be a victim of scammers. You are going to make bad financial decisions. You need our help. Her concern sounded fake, calculated. It was the last resort of someone watching a fortune escape. My age again? I said, standing up as well. You know what? You are right. I am an older woman, but I am also a woman who worked for 40 years, who managed a home, who raised 2 children, who cared for a sick husband. If I could do all that, I think I can handle a bank account. Mr. Thompson began to gather the documents, a signal that the meeting had officially ended. Mrs. Emily, I will need you to come tomorrow to sign some papers and transfer the accounts to your name. The process should be completed in a week. My children exchanged desperate looks. They knew their last chance was slipping away. Michael approached once more, this time with tears in his eyes. Mom, please, we are your family, your only family. Are you really going to abandon us for money? His tears might have worked before. They might have softened my heart if I had seen them a year ago, a month ago, even a week ago. But after the funeral, after how they treated me in the most painful moment of my life, those tears arrived too late. Abandon you for money, I asked. You were the first ones to talk about money. You were the ones who treated me as if I were nothing more than an obstacle to your inheritance. I am only protecting what your father wanted me to protect, my dignity. Daniel approached too, flanking me along with his brother. For a moment, I felt a pang of fear. They were 2 large men and I was just an older woman. But Mr. Thompson was still there, witness to everything that was happening. They would not dare do anything physical. Listen to us, said Daniel with a hoarse voice. We can reach an agreement. We do not want all the money. We just want our fair share. We are your sons. We worked hard all our lives waiting for this moment. His confession was more honest than he intended. It confirmed that their entire relationship with me had been a long-term investment. Your fair share? I asked. What is the fair share of a mother who gave you everything and received contempt in return? What is the fair share of a woman who sacrificed her own dreams to ensure yours? My voice cracked slightly, but I maintained my composure. Linda, who had remained quiet for the last few minutes, finally exploded. You are a selfish and vengeful old woman. That money should be for the next generations, not for you to waste on your senile whims. Her words were like pure poison, designed to hurt me in the deepest part. But this time, instead of hurting me, her insults strengthened me. They made me remember why my husband had taken this decision. They made me remember why I had to stand firm. "Thank you, Linda," I said with a sad smile. "Hey, you just demonstrated exactly why your husband will not inherit a single dollar more than what his father decided to give him." I left the lawyer's office with my head high, but inside my whole body was shaking. 45 years of marriage, 38 years being a mother, and it had all ended in that room full of shouting and reproach. My children followed me to the street, their voices mixing in a desperate chorus of pleas and threats. "Mom, this cannot stay like this," Michael yelled as I walked toward my car. "We are going to contest that will. We are going to prove Dad was not in his right mind." Linda supported him from behind, promising they would get the best lawyers in the country. Daniel remained quiet, but his silence was more threatening than his brother's screams. I stopped next to my car and turned to face them one last time. "Do it," I said with a firm voice. "Contest the will, but remember your father was very clear. Any attempt to question his decisions will result in the complete loss of that small monthly allowance he left you." Sarah turned pale upon hearing this. $500 was not much, but it was better than nothing. That night alone in my house, I allowed myself to cry for the first time since the funeral. I cried for my husband, for the family I thought I had, for the years lost trying to earn the love of children who only saw me as a source of money. But I also cried of relief. I was finally free of their expectations, of their constant demands, of their barely disguised contempt. The next day, I returned to Mr. Thompson's office to complete the paperwork. The bank accounts, the investments, the house. Everything officially passed to my name. When I saw the numbers on the bank statements, I almost fainted. My husband had been much more careful with money than I imagined. He had saved, invested, multiplied our resources for decades. It was a fortune that could last me the rest of my life and more. But it was not just the money that excited me. It was the freedom. For the first time in my adult life, I did not have to consult with anyone about my decisions. I did not have to justify my expenses, my plans, my dreams. I could do whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted, however I wanted. My first decision was to move. That house was full of painful memories, of tense conversations, of moments when I felt like a stranger in my own home. I hired a real estate agency and put the property up for sale. It was a large house in an exclusive neighborhood. It would sell quickly and for a lot of money. Meanwhile, I settled temporarily in a luxury hotel downtown. It was something I had never allowed myself before, but now I could. A room with an ocean view, room service, spa, everything I wanted. For the first time in decades, I felt pampered, cared for, valued. It was in that hotel where I received the first desperate call from Michael. "Mom, we saw you on the real estate news. Are you really going to sell the family home?" His voice sounded broken, as if he had finally understood that this was real, that it was not just a temporary tantrum on my part. "It is not the family home," I replied. "It is my house. Your father left it to me. I can do with it whatever I want." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could imagine him calculating how much the property was worth, how much money he was losing with every day that passed. "Where are you going to live?" he asked finally. "Are you going to move far away? How are we going to see you?" It was funny how he worried about seeing me now when for years he had found excuses to avoid family visits. "I am going to buy something smaller," I told him, "something that is truly mine, a place where I can be happy." I did not tell him I had already seen some beautiful apartments with an ocean view. I did not tell him I was considering moving to another city entirely. That information did not concern him. Daniel called that same night, but with a different approach. "Mom, I have been thinking about everything that happened. Maybe we were too hard on you. Maybe we did not appreciate everything you did for us." His apology sounded rehearsed, calculated. He was the smarter brother, the one who understood that honey attracted more flies than vinegar. Maybe, I asked. Daniel, you treated me as if I were invisible for years. You made me feel like a burden in my own family. And now that there is money involved, maybe you were too hard? His breathing accelerated on the other end of the line. He knew I had figured him out. It is not about the money. He lied. It is because I realized we could lose you forever. You are our mother. We need you. But I no longer needed to be needed. For decades I had lived for others. I had existed to serve, to give, to sacrifice myself. Now I wanted to live for me. The calls continued for days. Michael alternated between desperate pleas and veiled threats. Daniel maintained his strategy of feigning regret. Their wives also called each one with her own version of apologies that sounded hollow and late. But I had made a decision. It was not just about the money, although the money was important. It was about respect, dignity, the right to live my last years in peace. It was about breaking a pattern of emotional abuse that had lasted too long. 1 week after the reading of the will, while I was having breakfast on the hotel terrace, watching the sunrise over the ocean, I received a notification on my phone. The house had sold, above the asking price. Now I had enough money to buy whatever I wanted, go wherever I wanted, be whoever I wanted. I got up from the table and walked to the balcony. The salty air filled my lungs, and for the first time in months, I smiled genuinely. My children thought they had lost an inheritance. I had won my freedom. 3 weeks after selling the house, I moved to a beautiful apartment facing the sea in an exclusive part of the city. It was modern, bright, with huge windows that let in the sunlight all day long. In the mornings, I drank coffee watching the seagulls fly over the waves. In the afternoons, I read on my terrace while the sun set on the horizon. It was the life I had always dreamed of, but never dared to live. It was Jessica, my new neighbor, who told me about the luxury mall that had just opened near my new home. "You should go," she told me during one of our casual meetings in the lobby. "They have incredible stores and a beautiful cafe on the second floor." I had not gone shopping for pleasure in years. It had always been utilitarian shopping, fast, focused on the necessary. I decided to give myself that treat. I dressed in an elegant red dress I had bought the week before. I put on my best shoes and went out to explore my new life. The mall was impressive, full of stores I had only seen in magazines before. I stopped in front of a jewelry store, admiring a pearl necklace that shined under the special lights. "Can I help you with anything?" asked the saleswoman with a professional smile. She was young, elegant, with that helpful attitude one only sees in expensive stores. "I am just looking," I responded, but she insisted on showing me several pieces. There were diamond earrings, gold bracelets, rings that cost more than the annual salary of many people. I was trying on a particularly beautiful bracelet when I heard familiar voices near the store entrance. My heart raced before my mind completely processed what was happening. It was Linda speaking loudly with someone on the phone, complaining bitterly about selfish women who do not think about the next generations. I turned slowly and saw her standing next to a watch display, gesturing dramatically while she spoke. She was wearing a cheap dress that tried to look elegant but failed miserably. Her shoes were worn, and her purse, although clean, showed evident signs of excessive use. It was clear she was going through financial difficulties. "Yes, $500 a month," she was saying into the phone. "Can you believe that pettiness? A woman who has millions and gives us $500 as if we were beggars." She had not noticed my presence yet. She was too focused on her bitter conversation and her endless complaints. The saleswoman asked me if I wanted to take the bracelet. "Yes," I said, without taking my eyes off Linda, "and also those emerald earrings you showed me earlier." The total price was considerable, equivalent to several months of an average salary, but I paid without blinking. The sound of the transaction, the beep of the card machine, finally caught Linda's attention. When she saw me, her face went through several different colors. First surprise, then shame, finally a poorly disguised anger. She abruptly ended her phone call and approached me with a determined step. "Emily," she said with a forced, sweet voice, "what a surprise to find you here." "Hello, Linda." I responded naturally as if it were a normal chance encounter. I was buying myself some gifts. It is amazing what a woman can do with her own money, right? My comment was deliberately stinging, designed to remind her exactly who had the control now. Her eyes went immediately to the jewelry bags in my hands. I could see her mental calculations trying to estimate how much I had spent, how much money I was wasting on luxuries she believed belonged to her. "I see you are adjusting well to your new situation," she said with a forced smile. "Very well confirmed. In fact, I have never felt better. I have a beautiful apartment. I am meeting new people. I'm enjoying things I never thought I could afford." Every word was a reminder of everything she had lost due to her greed and cruelty. Linda tried to change strategy. "You know, Emily, we have been thinking a lot about what happened. Maybe we all reacted badly because of the pain of losing. Well, you know, grief makes us say things we do not really mean." Her acting was pathetic, desperate, completely transparent. "Grief?" I asked. "Is that what you call the way you treated me during my husband's funeral? Grief is what made you stop me from saying goodbye to the man I loved for 45 years. My voice raised slightly, attracting the attention of other customers in the store. The saleswoman approached discreetly, asking if everything was okay. "Perfectly," I assured her. "Just a family conversation." But Linda looked increasingly uncomfortable with the attention we were attracting. It was obvious she did not want strangers to witness this conversation. "Maybe we could talk in private," she suggested, looking nervously at the other customers. "There is a cafe near here where we could sit and talk like civilized people." It was funny how she now wanted to be civilized when for years she had been anything but that with me. "I have nothing to talk to you about in private," I responded firmly. "If you have something to say to me, you can do it right here." My refusal visibly destabilized her. She was used to controlling situations, manipulating conversations for her benefit. But now I had the power. "Okay," she said, taking a deep breath. "I wanted to apologize. We all want to apologize. We know we were too hard on you and we want to compensate you somehow." Her apologies arrived months too late, but I decided to listen to what she had to offer. "Compensate me?" I asked with genuine curiosity. "How do you plan to compensate for years of contempt and humiliation? How are you going to compensate for the fact that you treated me as if I were invisible in my own family?" Linda swallowed hard, clearly not expecting me to be so direct. We could start including you more in family decisions," she offered weakly. "We could have regular family dinners, celebrate birthdays together, be a real family again." It was almost comical how she thought I would want to be part of their toxic version of family again. "A real family," I repeated with a bitter laugh. "Linda, a real family does not exclude the matriarch from the patriarch's funeral. A real family does not treat their elders like unwanted burdens. A real family does not wait anxiously for their parents' death to inherit their money." Each word was like a slap to her. Her mask of false sweetness finally cracked. "Fine," she said with a tense voice. "Maybe we were not perfect, but you were not the perfect mother either. You were always too controlling, too critical. You never let us make our own decisions." It was typical of her to flip the situation and become the victim. "Controlling?" I asked. "For working 2 jobs to support you when your father lost his? For sacrificing my own dreams to ensure you could go to college? For taking care of you when you were sick? For supporting you in every crisis? For being there whenever you needed me?" My voice trembled with contained emotion. Linda was left speechless for a moment, but quickly recovered her defensive attitude. "That was years ago, Emily. Things change. Families evolve. You cannot stay clinging to the past forever. It was incredible how she minimized decades of sacrifice as if they were simple anecdotes of the past. "You are right," I said with a calm that disconcerted her. "Families evolve, and I have evolved too. I have evolved into a woman who no longer accepts being treated like trash by people who only value me when they need something." And my words resonated in the silence of the jewelry store. At that moment, as if fate had orchestrated the perfect encounter, Michael appeared running toward us. Evidently, Linda had sent him a message when she saw me. He arrived agitated, sweaty, with that desperate look I had learned to recognize during the last few weeks. "Mom," he panted, trying to catch his breath. "Thank God we found you. We have been looking for you all over the city." His dramatic entrance brought even more attention from the other customers. An older lady with a cane stopped completely to watch the show. "You were looking for me?" I asked, feigning surprise. "What for? Am I finally important enough for you to look for me?" Michael exchanged a nervous look with Linda. It was obvious they had planned this conversation but did not expect me to be so direct. "Mom, please," pleaded Michael. "We need to talk. Daniel is waiting in the cafe upstairs. We can solve all this as a family." It was curious how the word family appeared constantly in their mouths now that there was money involved. "Daniel is here too?" I asked. "What is this? A family ambush?" My tone was light, almost amused, but inside I felt a mixture of sadness and anger. Even now, even after everything that had happened, they were still trying to manipulate me. "It is not an ambush," lied Linda. "We just want to clear things up. We want you to know that we deeply regret what happened. We were hurting, confused by the loss. We were not thinking clearly." Their excuses sounded rehearsed, as if they had practiced this speech several times. "You know what?" I said, taking my shopping bags. "You are right. Let's talk, but not in private. Let's talk right here, where everyone can hear." Linda turned pale at the suggestion. "Shall we go to the cafe?" she insisted. "It will be more comfortable." "No," I responded firmly. "If you have something to say to me, you can do it here. After all, you had no problems humiliating me publicly at the funeral. Why do you want privacy now?" Michael looked desperately around him, noticing that several people were listening to our conversation. "Okay," he sighed, defeated. "Mom, we have been talking amongst ourselves, and we realized we made terrible mistakes. We let ourselves be carried away by negative emotions, and we hurt you deeply." His confession sounded sincere, but I knew my children too well. "What negative emotions exactly?" I asked. "Greed? Impatience for your father to die? Contempt toward me for being an older woman?" Each question was like a dart straight to the heart of their real motivations. Linda tried to interrupt, but I silenced her with a look. "No, let him speak. I want to hear exactly what those negative emotions were that led you to treat me the way you did." Michael shifted uncomfortably, clearly regretting having used that phrase. Maybe we were afraid," he admitted finally. "Afraid things would change. Afraid of losing the stability we had always known." It was the most honest explanation I had heard from him in years, but it was still full of self-pity. "Afraid of losing stability?" I asked. "Michael, you are grown men with jobs and families of your own. What stability depended on your father's death?" My question left him without an answer. He could not admit that his financial stability depended on an inheritance without confessing his greed. The tension in the jewelry store was palpable. Other customers pretended to examine jewels while clearly listening to every word of our conversation. The saleswoman kept herself busy rearranging displays, but it was obvious she was also paying attention to the drama unfolding in her store. "Look," said Linda finally, "maybe we could reach some kind of agreement. We are not asking for all the money, just a fair share, something that recognizes that we are also family, that we also have rights." Her proposal was pathetic in its transparency. "A fair share?" I asked. "Your father already decided what your fair share was. $500 a month for 2 years. That was his conscious and informed decision. Michael shuddered upon hearing the figure mentioned in public. "But that is not enough to live on," he protested. "We have expenses, responsibilities, families to support." His complaint revealed exactly what I suspected. They had been counting on the inheritance to solve their financial problems. "Then work more," I responded simply. "Do what the rest of the world does. Work to earn a living instead of waiting for your parents to die to solve your economic problems." The raw reality of my words hit them like a bucket of cold water. At that moment, Daniel arrived, clearly sent by Linda when she realized the conversation was not going according to her plans. He brought Sarah by the hand, both with calculatedly worried expressions. It was like watching a badly acted play where all the actors had forgotten their lines. "Mom," said Daniel with a trembling voice, "they told us you were here. We've been very worried about you." Sarah nodded vigorously, feigning a concern that had never been shown before. It was almost insulting how little effort they made to seem genuine. "Worried?" I asked. "Why? Because I am finally living my life the way I want to live it? Because for the first time in decades, I am not available to solve your problems?" My tone was calm, but my words cut like knives. "It is not that," lied Sarah. "It is just that, well, a woman your age living alone handling so much money, there are many scammers out there who take advantage of elderly people." Her fake concern for my well-being was so transparent, it resulted comical. "Like you took advantage of me for years?" I asked directly. "Like you asked me for borrowed money you never returned. Like you expected me to maintain your expenses while you saved for your own luxuries." Sarah blushed, knowing that every accusation was true. Daniel tried to take control of the situation. "Mom, maybe we could go somewhere more private to talk. This is not appropriate for a public place." But I was enjoying every moment of their discomfort. For years, they had humiliated me in private. It was time they experienced public shame. "Not appropriate?" I asked. "How was it not appropriate that you kicked me out of my husband's funeral? How was it not appropriate that you told me I had no right to be at the reading of the will?" Each word resonated in the silence of the jewelry store, where other customers were now openly listening to the drama. Michael looked nervously around him, noticing the curious faces watching us. "People are listening, Mom," he murmured. "Do you really want strangers to know about our family problems?" His concern for public image was revealing. "Strangers?" I asked, loudly addressing the other customers. "You know what? These are my children. I raised them with love. I gave them everything I had. I sacrificed my own dreams for them. And when their father died, they kicked me out of his funeral because they wanted to inherit faster." The expressions of shock on the faces of the spectators were immediate. "Mom, stop!" yelled Daniel, but it was already too late. The other customers began to murmur among themselves, clearly outraged by what they had just heard. An older lady approached me and put a comforting hand on my shoulder. "Dear," she told me with a gentle voice, "I am so sorry for what you are going through, but I am glad to see you stand up for yourself." Her support strengthened me even more. For the first time in years, strangers showed me more compassion than my own family. Linda tried to control the damage. "There are misunderstandings," she said, addressing the observers. "Emotions run very high after a family loss." But her explanation sounded hollow after everything they had already heard. "There are no misunderstandings," I said clearly. "These are the facts. My children kicked me out of my husband's funeral. They excluded me from the reading of the will, and now that they discovered I inherited everything, suddenly they want to be a loving family again." The brutal honesty of my statement left everyone in silence. A young couple who had been examining engagement rings approached. "Excuse me," said the man, "but what you are describing is terrible. Did your own children really treat you like that?" His direct question put my children in an impossible position. "It is more complicated than that," stuttered Michael. There have been family tensions, misunderstandings. But his excuses sounded pathetic compared to my direct testimony. Daniel tried to take my arm to move me away from the growing audience. "Do not touch me," I said firmly, pulling away from him. For years, they touched me when it suited them. They hugged me when they needed something. They kissed me when they wanted money. But when I really needed them in the most painful moment of my life, they turned their backs on me. My voice cracked slightly, but I maintained my composure. Sarah made one last desperate attempt. "Emily, we all make mistakes, but family is forever. We can forgive and move forward." Her plea was particularly hypocritical coming from someone who had been one of the cruelest to me. "Family is forever?" I asked. "Where was that philosophy when you told me I had no right to say goodbye to my husband? Where was that family loyalty when you treated me as if I were a stranger at the funeral?" Sarah had no answer for that. The jewelry saleswoman approached discreetly. "Ma'am," she told me in a low voice, "if you need me to call security or if you feel uncomfortable, I can help you." Her offer moved me. A stranger offered me more protection than my own children. "Thank you," I replied, "but I can handle this." I turned toward my children one last time. "You have 5 minutes to tell me exactly what you want. After that, I am leaving, and I do not want to see you again unless it is absolutely necessary." My ultimatum took them by surprise. Daniel took a deep breath. "We want a second chance," he said finally. "We want to prove that we can be better sons, that we can treat you with the respect you deserve." It was the first time he admitted they had not respected me. "A second chance for what? So you can inherit everything?" "To treat me well only because now I am rich." My question went straight to the point of their true motivations. "It is not about the money," lied Michael, but his lie was so obvious that even the strangers present exchanged skeptical looks. "It is because we realized we need you. That family is the most important thing." "You need me?" I repeated with a bitter laugh. "Now you need me?" Where was that need when your father was dying and I needed emotional support? Where was it when I was left alone in that huge house, crying every night without any of you bothering to call? My voice rose, loaded with years of repressed pain. The audience that had formed around us murmured with indignation. An older lady came closer and said loudly, "You should be ashamed of yourselves. Treating your own mother like that is unforgivable." Other voices joined in creating a chorus of disapproval that made my children visibly shrink. Daniel tried one last desperate strategy. He took out his phone and began showing me photos. "Look, Mom," he said with a broken voice, "these are your grandchildren. They miss you. They ask for their grandmother constantly." The photos showed the children in their school activities, at birthday parties, in family moments where I was notably absent. "My grandchildren?" I asked, taking the phone to see the images better. The same grandchildren who did not invite me to their last birthday because it would be too complicated. The grandchildren who do not even know my phone number because their parents never gave it to them? His tears seemed more out of frustration than genuine regret. "We did not know how to include you," he sobbed. "After Dad got sick, everything became so complicated. We did not want to bother you with our problems." His excuses were pathetic, and everyone present could see it. "You did not want to bother me?" I asked incredulously. "But you did want to bother me asking for borrowed money constantly. You did want to bother me when you needed me to babysit the kids for free. You did want to bother me when you needed me to cook for your parties without paying me." Each example I gave resonated with painful truth. Michael looked around the store, noticing how the other customers looked at them with open disgust. "Please, Mom," he whispered. "People are recording with their phones. This could go out on social media." His concern for public image revealed his true priorities. "And that worries you?" I asked. "Does it worry you that people know how you treat your mother? Maybe you should have worried about that before humiliating me publicly at the funeral." My response provoked murmurs of approval among the spectators. A young woman who had been recording approached. "Ma'am," she told me, "your story is inspiring. Seeing a woman stand up for herself after so much abuse is powerful. Would you mind if I shared this on my social media? I think many people need to hear your message." Her request took me by surprise. I looked at my children, who turned pale at the possibility of their behavior going viral. "Go ahead," I told the young woman. "Let the whole world know how these men treated the woman who gave them life." Linda practically fainted upon hearing my permission. "You cannot do that!" "Emily," yelled Daniel, "that will ruin our reputations, our jobs, our social relationships." His panic was delicious to observe. Finally, he understood the consequences of his actions. "Like you ruined my dignity?" I asked calmly. "Like you ruined the last moments I could have had with my husband? Like you ruined my right to grieve in peace?" Each question was a direct blow to their conscience, if they had any left. Michael made one last desperate attempt. He knelt on the marble floor of the jewelry store in front of all the spectators. "Mom, please," he begged with tears in his eyes. "Forgive us. We will do whatever to make it up to you. We will work the rest of our lives to earn your forgiveness." His dramatic demonstration attracted even more attention, but I had made my decision long before this encounter. "Michael," I said with a firm but not cruel voice, "get up. Dignity is not recovered by kneeling when it is already too late. It is built by treating people well when it still matters." He stood up slowly, defeated. "Listen to me well," I said, addressing the four of them for the last time. "Your father made the right decision in his will. He saw what I refused to see for years, that you did not love me. You only loved what I could give you. Now that you know the truth, we can stop pretending." The silence that followed was absolute. I took my shopping bags and walked toward the exit of the jewelry store. The spectators moved aside respectfully, some applauding discreetly. At the door, I stopped and turned one last time. "You can keep those $500 monthly," I said. "You're going to need them more than me." And with those words, I closed that chapter of my life forever. 6 months after that encounter in the jewelry store, my life had changed completely. I moved to a coastal city 3 hours away where no one knew my family history, and where I could simply be Emily, a woman of 67 years who had decided to live for herself for the first time in decades. I bought a small but beautiful house with an ocean view where every morning I had breakfast on my terrace, listening to the sound of the waves. I adopted an orange cat whom I named Thompson in honor of the lawyer who helped me recover my dignity. I enrolled in painting classes, something I had always wanted to do but never had time for. The video of my confrontation with my children went viral as the young woman in the jewelry store had predicted. Millions of people watched it, and the comments were overwhelmingly supportive of me. Hundreds of older women shared their own stories of family abuse, of ungrateful children, of years lost serving families that did not value their sacrifices. The impact on my children's reputation was devastating. Michael lost his job when the video reached his boss, who declared publicly that his company did not tolerate employees who mistreated elderly people. Daniel had to close his small business when customers began canceling contracts after seeing how he treated his own mother. Linda and Sarah also faced social consequences. Their friend groups excluded them. Their neighbors avoided them. Even at the supermarket, people recognized them and pointed at them. The public shame they had feared so much materialized in the most painful way possible. They tried to contact me several times during those months. Phone calls I did not answer. Letters I returned unopened. Emails I blocked automatically. They even went so far as to hire a lawyer to try to contest the will, but as Mr. Thompson had warned, they automatically lost their small monthly allowance for that attempt. One afternoon, while I was painting a seascape in my new studio, I received an unexpected visit. It was Jessica, my old neighbor, who had driven 3 hours to see me. "I had to tell you," she told me with emotion. "Your children appeared in the building last week asking for your new address." "What did you tell them?" I asked without stopping painting. "I told them I had no idea where you were," responded Jessica with a knowing smile. "But I also told them that if they had ever really loved their mother, they would let her live in peace." Her loyalty moved me deeply. She told me they looked haggard, that Linda had aged years in just months, that Daniel had lost weight and looked constantly nervous. "Guilt is consuming them," observed Jessica, "but also the economic loss. Apparently, they are facing serious financial problems." Their economic problems did not surprise me. For years, they had lived beyond their means, counting on an inheritance they believed secure. Now they had to face the reality of their irresponsible financial decisions without the safety net they had taken for granted. A few days after Jessica's visit, while walking along the beach at sunset, I reflected on the path I had traveled. I had lost my children, but I had gained my freedom. I had lost a dysfunctional family, but I had found inner peace. I had lost years of happiness, but I had recovered my dignity. The money I inherited allowed me to live comfortably, but the most valuable thing I gained was self-respect. For the first time in my adult life, my decisions were mine. My time was mine. My future was mine. I did not have to justify my expenses, my plans, my dreams to anyone. I established a small foundation to help older women facing family abuse or abandonment. Every month, I donated part of my inheritance to support shelters, legal assistance programs, and emotional support services. It was my way of transforming my pain into something positive for other women in similar situations. In the quiet nights, sitting on my terrace with Thompson purring in my lap, sometimes I thought about my children, not with resentment, but with a serene sadness for what we could have had if they had chosen love over greed. But I had learned that I could not change other people. I could only change how I responded to them. One night, while observing the stars reflecting in the ocean, I wrote in my diary the words that would become my philosophy of life. I do not regret having loved them. I only regret not having understood sooner that kindness should never be practiced at the cost of self-destruction. I learned that true love toward others must start with self-love, and that protecting my dignity was not an act of selfishness, but of survival. I closed the diary and smiled, looking at the infinite horizon. At 67 years old, I had finally learned to live for myself, and for the first time in decades, I was completely happy.